Hello and welcome to Workplace Makers with Nina Fountain. This is the podcast that gets to know the people creating workplaces we aspire to. It's about achieving the ultimate win, a workplace people are drawn to wherever they work from, and discovering how we can remove limitations to enable people to be their best through workplace innovation and design. I'm your host, modern workplace consultant Nina Fountain. Join me as I unlock the secrets of attractive, productive, and engaging modern workplaces. Today we are joined by Heather Levitt Martinez. Heather is the founder of TechHostAcademy.com, which is a company supporting leaders and teams to create online sessions which are engaging, efficient, and equitable, something that most workplaces today know that they need. Heather's a change management expert and a magician at understanding the role of virtual meetings in the workplace and making them work. And so Heather, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Nina. It's my honor.
Let's get into online meetings because there is so much to understand here. And I know you're reducing the friction in online sessions these days. You're training others as well in the body of knowledge and skills that's required to do this. And so I'm really interested in how you got to this point because your focus prior to the pandemic, I understand, was working as a visual practitioner. And you've got this visual background. You're a certified visual coach, a graphics specialist. Can you explain for us what is the role of visual practitioner, and was it the global pandemic that flicked a switch for you into something else? Tell us how you got here.
Thank you for asking that. And I will say I'm still a visual practitioner, but it's a lot less, and I only do certain parts of that whole thing. And so what is a visual practitioner? It's really an overarching term for maybe a graphic recorder, graphic facilitator, meaning like someone that's facilitating using visuals, or a visual consultant or coach. So there are so many terms used in our field because we really represent a diverse skill, so many different skill sets and expertise. So if you hear me use a term that's unclear, just know that I'm speaking to it as a function. If we end up talking a little bit about what is a visual practitioner, you might hear some other terms, and it's really around the function of that. So yeah, before the pandemic, I traveled all over the world and I supported companies in meetings using large-scale visuals drawn with markers on paper on walls. And I was actually boarding a plane in Iceland coming back to the United States after a 5-week tour in Europe where I actually teach visual practitioners how to improve their lettering. So it's a very, very niche that I did. And I received a message from a friend. She asked where I was, and she said that the airports all over Europe were shutting down because of the pandemic. And so I was freaking out. I mean, I kind of heard about it, but even though I was in the UK, I was in a retreat the week before. And so I didn't really know what was going on. And so, so when I got home, within a week, I lost nearly 90% of all my work. I tried convincing clients we could manage the conferences online. I had been teaching online for 3 years, so I had some experience doing that, but everybody was really scared. So I knew right away that my teaching experience would help people online. As a visual practitioner, we're really helpers in the room, and I thought this is my opportunity to be a helper online.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow, and a fantastic transition because you've brought that experience, that awareness of the visual aspect of the online experience.
Yes.
And then also that experience of working online yourself. What do you think people are struggling with in terms of virtual meetings? Struggle was probably the main way we would describe that transition from these effective in-person meetings to virtual meetings that need to now also be effective but also engaging. So what have people struggled with in your view?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that today about today, because just today I was thinking, is the reason why I started TechHost Academy still relevant? And what I learned from being in hundreds of meetings, but also being a part of discovery meetings and figuring out proposals, is that people who wanted to hire me wanted more productive meetings. Right? So they wanted their participants to be more productive. They wanted to make sure that that investment was going to pay off. It was all about metrics and money. And at the time I went, okay, yes. However, to make people productive, you need to make sure they're engaged, that the meeting is run efficiently, there aren't technical issues, and that there's equity. I was reflecting on that today thinking, okay, it's still true. We still need those things. The problems that we had prior were around before the pandemic, like cultural things, now have shifted to online things, right? And so today, I just read an article about CEOs losing it and people recording CEOs losing it. And it was talking about why CEOs are losing it. And they're losing it because people are not being productive. And they're accusing people of not being productive. They don't trust them working from home. They're saying things like there's not engagement. People aren't turning on their videos. A lot of times they'll say, how do we get the introverts to speak up, or how can we get people more engaged? And so it does go back to a lot about engagement. But what I think a lot of leaders don't recognize is that the equity that goes into that, right? So sometimes I will tech host for other facilitators, which I love doing that. I facilitate myself, but I tech host for a lot of other facilitators. And at the end of a session, facilitators are like, yay, we did it. That went so great. And I'm sitting there going, hold on a second. I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed that the minorities in the room didn't speak up, or the lower level people didn't shine. It was the leaders and those who were more privileged that were speaking. So maybe in the next session, if there is a session, maybe there's a way that we can either break them up in different breakout rooms or encourage them to maybe ask when they come back to plenary. The leader asks the other people, would you like to explain? Or would you like to, what would you add? Or can I invite you to share what we talked about? Really being more servant leadership, but really with the idea of giving more voices in the room an opportunity to share.
And what's the impact that has for a workplace when more people do get the chance to share? Why is this something that leaders need to be paying more attention to?
Well, when that trust is built within each other, they're going to collaborate more. They're going to have those productive meetings. They're going to be more efficient because they're wanting to work with each other, right? When that happens, then those goals can be set. And I think a lot of times, I don't know, maybe you can help me with this. A CEO is making a lot of decisions for a lot of people, for the stakeholders, for shareholders, and sometimes they don't know what's happening at the grassroots level. And it's at the grassroots level, especially in online meetings, where people really need to be able to build that trust with each other. And you're going to get a lot of people disengaged and unengaged, but they're going to feel that at a level like, if I'm not bringing value, or I'm not being rewarded or at least acknowledged for the contribution that I'm bringing, they're not going to keep engaged. And they're going to be more quiet. And I think that leaders see that, and they don't necessarily see how important it is to make sure that we are bringing all those voices in.
Brilliant. And that engagement is really well established in the link with productivity. So we know when people are engaged, they're much more productive.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're part technology facilitator, part conversation facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
What is the role of tech host? How would you describe it?
Yeah, excellent. That's an excellent question. And I define it a couple of different ways. I will tell you that I have a really wonderful person in my group that inspired me. His name is Brian Tirallo, and he helped me become a facilitator. But he also has a book called Surviving the Horror of Online Meetings. I love it. It's so great. So the way he describes it is that tech hosts send out information, communicate with people. This is the technology we're going to use. Make sure everything goes smoothly. That the third party collaboration tools are going to go smoothly. And I completely agree with him. Like, don't get me wrong. That's what I really agree that it is. And we also help design a meeting. So if a meeting is already designed, we meet with the meeting coordinator, the facilitators, and we figure out there's three main things. We are there to be present for the facilitator, the presenter, to make sure they look good, to make sure that they're spotlighted when they need to be spotlighted, that if they need help with slides or third-party collaboration tools, making sure everybody transitions to those. We're also there for the participants, making sure that they have the technology they need, but also helping them feel a sense of belonging, right? And then the third piece is that we're really holding the space for the process. So I like to say, and I love to have a great flow, which is like a flow of show. A lot of facilitators call it facilitation notes, where you have the time, what's going to happen. If I know what the purpose and the needs are of the group, then I'm there to fill in those gaps where needed. What I like to say is protect the investment. What is that purpose? And if it's a recording, you make sure that everyone's muted, but that you also give them ways to communicate, whether you say unmute if there's timely relevant questions, or put 3 question marks in the chat. I specialize in approach design specifically, like knowing how to figure out that purpose and then what activities can we do in a meeting to make sure that it's effective. But not all tech hosts have that ability. Now, there are tech hosts that are my mentors that go way beyond me. And my favorite is Mike Muddy Schlegel, and he's got sort of a funny name, but Muddy has his office space looks like the command center on the Star Trek Enterprise. I mean, it is unbelievable. And I like to teach tech hosting with a simple computer, camera, and headset. I have a light, a backdrop, and I do have a secondary camera. That's it. I keep it really, really simple because I believe that those who are working remotely, this is what they have at home, right? And for the most part, they might have a light, they might have a backdrop, they might have a headset. But really, you can tech host with some very basic tools. I don't recommend doing it from your phone or a tablet, but you can do it from a laptop and you can do it from a desktop computer. So, for me, I feel like that helping the facilitator certainly can be very active, but some facilitators, they want to run the show, right? And so in that first discovery meeting that I have with clients, I then determine what are their strengths, how can I help, and where can we find and fill gaps.
So at the risk of being controversial, do you think there's a platform difference between Zoom, Teams, Blue Jeans, any of the others? Do you have a favorite?
I will say that all of my trainings are Zoom-based, and I have people who are Google and Teams experts if people need that, right? So we've got experts that can work in that. But almost everything now that I teach can be translated working on those other platforms. Now, I do have to say this caveat. We all know, well, for those of us who were on Zoom like 5 years ago, we know that the Zoom settings were like one page, right? It was a very simple platform. I just today went through every single Zoom setting in Zoom at TechHost Academy, and it took 3 hours.
I can believe it.
Hours. And I have some clients that I do that with, that we go through them all. And we don't go through every single setting because I explained what every setting was. We usually can do it in an hour and a half because I'm like, does this page match? Does this page match? We're just like matching up the settings to make sure that everything's working right. But when I first started as a tech host, we had a terrible time with Teams because they didn't even have breakout sessions. At the beginning of the pandemic, I will say this, however, there are lots of different preferences within the team environment, Microsoft Team environment. So if you are a tech host or you need to hire a tech host, make sure they have all the permissions to be able to do all the functions that are needed. That's the biggest piece.
I'm just wondering as well, with you having sat in a bunch of meetings over the last few years and seen meetings that have really achieved their purpose, and obviously that's what you're looking to help leaders and facilitators to do. Mm-hmm. But have you, in the course of doing that, seen any insights around what really makes great meeting leadership? So what are some of the behaviors or things that leaders do that make meetings work really, really well?
I think some really great leaders are going to love this answer, and I think some leaders are not going to want to hear this. And I just know that about leaders. Are you ready? You have to model the behaviors you want to see. You really do. And I say that because I used to work for a leadership and development company for a lot of Fortune 500 and 100 companies where we were helping coach those executive leaders. And I've worked with tons of CEOs. And I found that the CEOs that are the most successful, they like to call it servant leadership because they are of service to the people that they are leading. However, it's really about modeling that way. You cannot show up and demand something from your people and show up in a way that you are not you're not connected to them, that you are not like them. It's how you show up, they will tend to show up, right? So I think modeling the way is a really big piece.
That's great. Simple. It's very clear, isn't it? And I think people can probably remember or reflect back on experiences where they've been on one end or the other and seen the impact of that. Do you have any words for leaders who really want to run successful online meetings in terms of anything else they need to be thinking about, their technique or the way they show up? Or, yeah, what are some of the things that they could do that could help lead them to a great outcome in their virtual meetings with that efficiency, that ease, that engagement?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to culture. It really comes down to the people that are doing the work. And I really do believe that as a leader, and I know that some people feel like it starts at the top. And as a visual practitioner, we kind of live on all levels of the organization. We write out the visions of the CEOs, and we're also helping those on the boots on the ground integrate and execute, right? So we're on every single level. And what I have found is that because I've gone into so many different meetings and I've had to adjust, adapt, and be a part of their culture in order to build that trust, to be a trusted advisor, and to work with them, that it really lied in the culture. And I've been in organizations where it's like, wow, their leader is making all the right business decisions, or they have a really great board who really knows what they're doing and they're well connected. However, the culture kind of stinks. And pretty soon you start seeing businesses go through those processes. And a strong culture, people who can trust and collaborate online, will help you meet the vision and the mission of the organization faster than a leader just saying, do this, do this, do this. It really comes from the people wanting to be and work together.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so how can people find you if they want to connect?
I wrote a 21-page playbook that literally says what you do before, during, and after a meeting.
Fantastic. So how could people access that?
That comes with TechHost Academy. So signing up for the program, you get access to that and tons of other materials. I do even have a 21-point, it's 21-page playbook and a 21-point checklist of what to do before a meeting starts. Hopefully I haven't upset anybody too much. I tend to be pretty direct. But go ahead, bring it on. I know what works in the meetings that I'm in, and they've been really great. So they can go to techhostacademy.com. That's my main website. And I'm also a visual coach and also helping other visual practitioners too.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks, Heather. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.